Hey everyone, I'm Ervin Cabug, and let me start with a simple question. What if something you believe was true was actually false, but you never questioned it? Think about it. Every time we scroll, we share, we scroll, we like, and share information online, but how often do we actually ask if is this really true? Because in today's digital world, information doesn't just spread fast, it spreads faster than we think. And sometimes we believe not things because they are actually true, but because they are repeated. So today we will talk about digital citizenship as a response to this information. And before we go deeper, let's watch this video.
National Bank cracked down on members of fake news related to the ongoing energy crisis. In a statement on Monday, April 6, PNP Chief General Jose Bench Jr. says the agency will pursue and file cases against those spreading false information amid the crisis. He emphasizes that the Middle East war and its impacts are a serious matter. Hernandez stresses that he will not allow any attempt to exploit the situation and trigger unwarranted panic among the public. He notes that the police's anti-cybercrime group is being ordered to intensify its monitoring of online pages and social media accounts possibly being used to spread disinformation. The PNP chief also says that local police units have been directed to counter fake news to prevent its spread online. This comes after the Presidential Communications Office stressed that Malacanang will pursue legal action against persons who maliciously spread fake news, claiming that the government will impose lockdowns due to fuel supply problems.
So, what just happened? At first, it looks simple, but when we look closer, there's actually a pattern. It starts with rumor. Something appears online about fuel shortages or lockdowns, and even if it's not confirmed yet, it feels urgent. Then it spreads. One post but become hundreds or even thousands. And here's the interesting part. People don't always check because when something is repeated enough, it starts to feel true. Then comes the reaction. People begin to worry. They talk about it. They prepare for something that might not even happen. And now, something online has created a real world effect. So, authorities step in, not just to correct the information, but to control its impact. And this raises a bigger question. If information can shape how people think and act, then what is our role in that process? Because here's the thing, this doesn't only happen in big crises, it happens every day. Think about viral content. Something trends. People react instantly, not because they fully understand it, but because it appeared, and everyone else is reacting. For example, many of us have probably seen the online issue involving Nico Natividad. When that issue circulated online, people immediately started reacting, sharing opinions, and discussing it, even when not everyone knew the complete context yet. Now consider this. In the Philippines, millions of people are active on social media every day, which means information doesn't just spread, it multiplies. A single post can quickly appear on thousands of screens within minutes. And because social media is deeply integrated into our daily lives, online discussions easily become public conversation. And when that happens, reaction usually comes first. People comment, people share, and form opinions sometimes without before fully understanding the situation. And because these reactions are public, they also influence how other people interpret the issue. So if we look at the comment sections online, we can clearly see different perspectives forming. Some people defended him, others criticized him, and some immediately made conclusions even without the complete information. This shows how online users interpret the same issue with different perspective depending on their beliefs, emotions, or assumptions. Eventually, the issue also affected the people around him, including reactions from his wife and daughter. And this reminds us that Online interactions do not always stay online. So they can create real emotional and social effects on individuals or even our families. This is why digital citizenship is important because this example is not necessarily about false information or disinformation. Instead, it shows us how people behave online, how quickly users react, how they quickly form opinions and influence others in digital spaces. It reminds us that being part of the online world also comes with responsibility, critical thinking, and awareness of how our actions can affect other people. Now, this connects to our chapter. We often think that having access to the internet means we are informed. But are we? The chapter explains that access is only the beginning because knowing how to use technology is not the same as understanding information. Yes, we can search, we can scroll, and we can share, but do we question? This is exactly what we saw earlier. Even when correct information exists, uh, false information can still spread. And this is where digital citizenship comes in. A digital citizen does not just consume any information. They pause, they question, and they verify. Because in a world where information spreads fast, thinking becomes our responsibility. Now, research supports this idea, and it shows that digital citizenship is built on three things. First, experience. Frequent exposure to online information increases familiarity, which can influence perceived truth. We are constantly exposed to information online, so naturally, what we see often feels familiar, and what feels familiar feels true. Second is critical thinking. Critical thinking involves evaluating the source and accuracy of information before accepting it. So, this is the ability to pause and ask, where did this come from? Because not everything that looks correct is actually correct. Third is education. Education develops the skills needed to evaluate information accurately and reduces susceptibility to misinformation. So, people who are trying to evaluate information are less likely to be misled. So, when we combine these three things experience, critical thinking, and education we get something powerful, and that is digital citizenship. Not just using the internet, but understanding it. Once again, I'm Ervin Dave Cabug, and I will now pass the discussion to my co-presenter, Miss Juliana.
Good day everyone. My name is Juliana B. Tagupa, and I have a question for you today. Do you guys remember back during the pandemic? Social media was flooded with all kinds of information about where COVID 19 came from. The two most popular stories were first, that it came from Chinese people eating bats, and second, that scientists created it in a laboratory. These stories spread fast. But in reality, COVID 19 was caused by a coronavirus that jumped from animals to humans. A natural spillover event, not like the rumors we saw online. So, meaning, these are fake news. This shows us how powerful misinformation can be. Even when people had access to the internet, many still believe and shared false stories like this. And that connects directly to our topic today, access versus digital inclusion. So, at first, these two concepts might sound the same, but in reality, they are actually very different. Access simply means having devices and internet connection. Digital inclusion, however, goes way deeper. It is about whether people can use technology meaningfully, critically, and responsibly. So, this distinction matters because in our generation, almost everyone has access, but not everyone is included and in the sense of being able to evaluate information about disinformation and participate safely online. So, access is the starting point, but inclusion is the real goal. Here, we see the imbalance. Many students today develop only instrumental skills, things like fast typing, using Word for homework, or even fixing a frozen screen. I mean, these are useful, but they don't really prepare us for the challenges of the digital age. What we really need are critical skills. These include checking sources, questioning information, and recognizing bias or disinformation. Because without these, access alone can actually create vulnerabilities. Let me think of an example. If a student clicks the first link in Google without checking the author or source, they might end up believing false information. This imbalance leads to digital gaps. So we conducted a survey. This is in senior high school CDO schools. At first, our participants came from XU, Laseo, and USTP, MOGS, and lastly, Bulwa National High School. We compared our survey from the chapter's data. Our survey in CDO schools shows that 95% of students are connected online. This proves that access is no longer the main barrier. But the chapter's data from Latin America reveals that many students define knowing technology only as instrumental skills. These include fixing screens, typing fast, or using Word, just like what I mentioned earlier. This means that while access is high, inclusion is still shallow. Students are online, but they are not yet critical users of technology. Now we compared again, and from our survey, we found out that 40% of our students admitted that they usually click the first link that they see. The chapter confirms this same pattern in Latin America. Students also rely on the first link that they see. They don't compare websites and they don't compare authors. This shows weak inclusion habits. Students are connected, but they are not really questioning or verifying information. Quick clicks without fact checks makes them really vulnerable to misinformation. On the positive side, 55% of our students compare multiple sources before trusting information. This shows that some are practicing digital inclusion, which is a good thing. But the chapter reveals that many Latin America students still trust information from friends or relatives without verification. This proves that critical thinking is uneven. Some students are developing inclusion skills, but many still rely on unverified sources. So, to conclude, both our local survey and the chapter's data lead to the same conclusion. Students today have access to technology, but lack consistent critical skills. Access is high, but inclusion, however, the ability to think, evaluate, and verify online information is still uneven. In short, access gets you online, but inclusion makes you wise online. This is why digital citizenship education is essential, both globally and locally. That's it for me. Now let's move to the next reporter.
Good morning. I am Benz Atienza, and I will be discussing the weak information habits. But before we proceed, I have a question. Does any of you have any idea what is information habit? So weak information habit is actually refers to the habit of behaviors where people accept or share information without carefully checking its credibility, source, or accuracy. Now, we all know that in today's digital world, information spreads very quickly. And because of this, people sometimes believe or share information immediately without verifying if it is reliable. Now, I have an example here that many of us might have done it. At the same point, we forgot to notice. So here is a sharing without verifying. So sharing without verifying actually is very common in on social media platforms like Facebook or TikTok. And the reason of this is people quickly share posts to inform others. However, they don't check the information if it is true. Now, we all know that in today's generation also, information can reach hundreds or even thousands of people. However, many users prioritize sharing over the accuracy, and that on reflects on it. These can lead to serious consequences. Now, let's get into the types of weak information habits. There are several different types of these habits that affects individuals. First one is reads headline only. Now, many people read only only the title of an article without checking the full content. Since headlines are some exaggerated, this basically means that these can cause misunderstanding and false assumption. Second is passive scrolling. Now, this happens when users quickly consume large amount of information on social media without carefully thinking about whether the information is accurate, biased, or reliable. And because because of this, content moves so fast online, then people often react immediately instead of analyzing it critically. So for the last is clickbait. So clickbait uses sensational or emotional headlines to attract attention and gain clicks. Um, these titles are often misleading and may not accurately represents the real content. People, people who can constantly rely on clickbait are most likely to spread inaccurate information. This is why reading headlines and clickbait correlates to each other. So let's proceed. So you might be wondering why people often fall into these habits and why do people do this? Now, first is that most people lack media literacy since everyone has not the skill or people are not trained to evaluate information properly. That's why they are more likely to fall in this um problem. Second is peer and social influence. They're often influenced by their friends, families, or any community that believes on information, and that creates pressure to them to do the same thing. And lastly is its convenience to them. So the main reason why people chose to do this is because it's quick and easy to do them instead of taking time to verify the information. So that's all for why people do this. So for my final part, so we will be discuss the effects of weak information habits. So misinformation spreads. Now, misinformation spreads. This is when people share content without verifying it. Just like this in this image right here, it was said that it is going to have energy lockdown. However, it was not um uh officially posted by the government. They did not posted um any what do you call that memorandum that it's going to be having a lockdown. So false information reach this is why false information reaches more people in a short amount of time. And one major effect is rapid spread of information. That's why it has 2.4K shares. When people fail to verify information before sharing it, false or misleading content can spread quickly across the digital platforms. This increases the confusion and makes it more difficult for people to identify accurate and reliable information. Next is poor decision making. Now, people rely on incorrect information to make choices. When the information they receive is inaccurate or incomplete or misleading, their decision may also become uh, flawed. Weak information habits reduce careful thinking and encourage impulsive reactions rather than their logic analysis. Next is loss of trust. Now, people keep encountering false or misleading information. They begin to lose trust in what they see online, even to people. It affects also how they view news, institution, or even people. And because of loss of trust, this can also lead to conflict. This can create misunderstanding, arguments, and division among individuals or groups. Now, people may strongly defend something that isn't even true. So that's all for my part. Let's have Chris Morata for his presentation.
So, good day, everyone. I am Christopher P. Morata, and today I am going to be talking about something that affects almost all of us every single day, whether we realize it or not. Every time you open through your phone and scroll through your feed, you're basically walking through a world where not everything you see is true, and some, if not most of it, is false and in purpose. But first, before we dive into its definition, let's identify if any of these posts seems like disinformation to you. The first post being about from a quotation from Lenny Robredo that says, "Karamihan kasi sa mga work from home na yan ay nasa bahay lang." And then, for the second one, which is a hidden supervolcano beneath the Philippine seas. So, which do you think? But before we dive into its answers, let's define what disinformation is. So, according to a researcher in the book of Navigating Through the Infodemic with Media Information Literacy, Roxana Murdokovich explained it clearly in 2021 that disinformation is not just something that is accidental. It is not just someone making a mistake or misremembering facts. This information is carefully designed and built with a specific purpose in mind, and it is to deceive audiences, which means that it is made to look believable and to feel emotional and to spread quickly. And the goal of this information is not just to confuse one person. Murdokovich points out that this information can target individuals, like spreading a lie about a specific politician, but it can also target entire groups of people, like, let's say, a religious community or an ethnic group. And when this information targets a society, it changes how millions of people around them see. And that's what makes this information so dangerous. One of the also the biggest ways this information does damage is not by changing facts, it is also by changing how we feel about other people. Because this information often works by spreading negative images and stories about specific groups, like like saying a certain religion is dangerous and a certain political group is evil. These kinds of false stories strengthen the prejudices that already exist today in our society. And when that happens, something very real happens, which is this discrimination and hostility between communities. And when people are fed something negative, false information about their neighbors, they start to basically distrust them, fear them, and even hate them. And it becomes harder for people to live together peacefully. And once that wall of hostility is built, it is very difficult to basically tear down. And this is why disinformation is not just a media problem, it is also a social problem. And shown here where the dogs are barking at each other for no reason. That's basically describes the world of social media. And also, disinformation ruins public debate. And what this means is that when disinformation floods public spaces, news feeds, and even group chats, it it doesn't just not confuse people. It actually kills real conversation because public debate requires a shared understanding of facts, and when one group of people believes this set of facts, another group believes a completely different set, and they are not just debating anymore, they're basically shouting at each other across a wall made of lies. This can be shown with the recent news report investigation in the Philippines showing that during the online rumor about former presidential spokesperson Edwin Lacerda possibly replacing the ICT Secretary Henry Aguda, there were suspicious coordinated fake accounts that quickly flooded social media comments, as shown here, claiming the news was fake news. And in one case, around 24 or more accounts appeared within most like 15 minutes, posting the same identical pattern of denial comments nearly at the same time. And it is said that this pattern is often linked to troll networks and coordinated inauthentic behavior. And these accounts were suspected because they were new and used similar wordings that influence public opinion and dismiss the report immediately after it came out. This chaos follows a pattern that researchers call the polarization loop. It starts with an extreme message, which is something designed to outrage you, and that message then gets an emotional reaction like fear or anger. That emotional reaction gets picked up by the media, the people, and then to the algorithm that pushes it to more people. And at the end result of these polarizations, that two sides cannot talk to each other anymore because this information is designed to work like this. And to further explain this, we can actually have the polarization loop examples because it also runs in the Philippines. We have seen it during elections, debates, and the loop basically keeps spinning because each stage fits the next one, and because social media algorithms reward contents, they are automatically pushed extreme and most divisive content to more people faster. And this is the how the system is meant to go viral. To give an example of the first one, which is the spark, we have seen here that there are quotes about a certain political opponent that mocks a certain political person or a group, basically to make the other side feel superior and angry at the same time. Like a well-known example of this, making fun of Lenny supporters that are labeled as kakampings and mocking them. And we can also see this in comment sections where there are pictures of other political opponents that are designed to basically anger the different kinds of people that oppose this opinion and more. Then what happens after this? Basically, once the spark is lit, doesn't just spread on its own. The algorithm pushes it. Social media platforms like Facebook, YouTube, or TikTok all use the same recommendation systems that are designed to keep people on the app as long as possible. And the way they do this is by showing you the content that I previously described, outrage content that gets a strong reaction from you. And this is shocking content and outrage inducing content that makes people angry. And to further explain this, why this algorithm happens is because of this company, Meta, because Meta uses a system in Facebook and Instagram that shows people posts they are more likely to click or like or share. This means if a post is angry or shocking or very political, it can spread faster. And over time, users may keep seeing the same political posts again and again, which can make opinions more divided and extreme. And also, these are actual troll firms, which are groups of people that manages fake accounts, like as previously mentioned in the first example, which is used to spread messages online, especially on Facebook and any other social media sites. They post the same comments and push fake news and basically attack critics or defend certain politicians because they use so many fake accounts with real, organized, controlled people. And what happens after this is that when the algorithm pushes the content that fits your reactions and your political views, you start to see only one side of the story. And researchers call this line the filter bubble because the algorithm keeps showing you content that you already agree with, and your online world starts to look like everyone thinks the same way you do. If you are on one side of politics, your feed is now full of people that are agreeing with you. If you are on the other side, however, your feed is full of people agreeing with them, which is opposite to you. And then you stop seeing the full picture. You can see here You can see in this type of post how divided people are nowadays with the kind of information, and it comes to a point where they start to share clearly false information as shown here, that is physically restricted. And what happens to this lastly is that the validation stage. This is when the most frightening result comes, a fractured national truth. This is when a country's people no longer agree on even the basic facts of their own country, because we have seen this in the Philippines already during the multiple elections during the time of internet, where millions of Filipinos genuinely believed that the Marcos era was a golden age. They had been living inside a very effective disinformation loop for years, and when a nation's truth is fractured like this, many problems follow about the democratic elections when voters are making decisions based on different set of facts. And this causes a very popular phenomena called an echo chamber. This is when someone only sees opinions that are the same as theirs, especially on social media. This happens because the algorithm keeps showing similar posts or groups that match what the person already likes. And over time, the person may think that most people agree with them, even if they actually don't, because they rarely see different or opposite views. Echo chambers can make heavily political opinions more divided because people just stay inside their own side beliefs and stop hearing balanced or opposite information. But it's not just politics. Disinformation also um, happen kuwan, in real world scenarios like energy scams. In 2026, a wave of energy related scams has been spreading across Philippine social media, which includes false claims about electricity subsidies from the government, fake solar panel programs, and supposedly fabricated posts claiming that electricity providers are secretly overcharging customers. These kinds of scams show us something important, and that this information is not always about politics or the elections. Sometimes it's about money, health, or safety. Now let us prove with another type of research by Jonathan Corpus Ong of the University of Massachusetts and Jason Cabañas. Basically, had a study called Architects of Network Disinformation. They basically interviewed a lot of people who produce disinformation, and they actually discovered something shocking, and that Philippine disinformation is not just random. It is organized, professional, and paid for, which proves Roxana Murtukovic's claim that it is in fact organized. One of their key findings was that the Philippine disinformation exploit social media algorithms by engineering what they call moral outrage, which, as previously discussed it in the polarization loop. They basically are professionals from advertising and PR industry that applies the techniques of marketing to politics. Now let's move forward to one of the biggest types of disinformation, which is historical distortion. This is one of the most dangerous forms of disinformation because it includes about the past. Historical distortion is when people deliberately rewrite or distort history to make something look bad or look good. And for years, organized campaigns on social media have been working to change how Filipinos remember the Marcos era, basically erasing the documented human rights abuses, the corruption and suffering of martial law victims. But this is the definition of it. Historical distortion is not to be confused with historical revisionism, because revisionism is when people re-examine history using new evidence, and distortion, on the other hand, is when facts are changed and twisted on purpose to make something or someone look better or worse. One of the examples of historical distortion is that Taliano gold myth. One of the most widely shared pieces of historical disinformation in the Philippines is what researchers call the Taliano gold myth. The story claims that before the Spanish colonization of the Philippines, a royal family called the Tagian Taliano owned an enormous amount of gold, which had hundreds of thousands of metric tons of it. And according to the myth, Ferdinand Marcos Sr. served as the Talianos' family lawyer and was paid in gold. The story then spread massively on social media during the 2022 elections. And here is what historians and fact checkers have made clear. There is no verifiable historical evidence that the Taliano royal family ever existed, and the Maharlika kingdom described in the myth is not a real historical identity. There are also numerous viral posts that show Ferdinand Marcos and Jose Rizal appearing together and with a group of people, but this can't be fact checked through Google because Jose Rizal died before Ferdinand Marcos was even born, but people still believe it because of this clearly photographed picture. And also a newspaper about Filipinos that fall for fake history that most people use to pity on the Aquinos and supporters of Lene Robredo. But real the real fact about this is that the image is taken out of context. It actually came from an AFP article about coordinated disinformation in the Philippines, not a newspaper about Lene or the Aquinos. It's actually um, a newspaper that talks about history narratives, especially related to Ferdinand Marcos. There's also a page that um, gets into published reports claiming that international leaders like Marcos Sr. is quoted as the greatest leader of all time. And students cited these articles in their papers and the reports without ever checking if the page is actually legitimate, even if they had like 300,000 followers. These people will still cite them because it talks about popular. But the real truth here is that this satirical page is actually not a credible journalistic outlet because it is not professional and had never been in the fact checking verification. And in our survey, 70% of students believe fake news like what the page shown. Here's a number that should stop all of us in our tracks. In our own survey conducted with students, 70% admitted that they have believed a piece of news that later turned out to be fake. 70%, which is basically students, young people who have had smartphones since they were children, who have grown up with social media and still they still fall for disinformation, and this proves that something that is extremely important. Having a smartphone does not automatically make you smart about information, and growing up online does not mean you know how to spot a lie. even though there were many quotes that talk about trying to actually find credible evidences of this, the smartest students must have to use smart methods that that to find the truth, like fact checking and researching using specific learnable techniques to verify information. And this can be discussed with digital citizenship about questioning who wrote the content and why, comparing the different sources of information, and becoming responsible users who can be easily tricked. And this will be further explained by the next presenter, the last but not the least, Kirk Aspiras.
Hey, Kirk, Louie here. We are in a crisis of information. What does that mean? Do you see my hand? I take a look at my hand and I select one finger of the 5 fingers that I have. And I will bite into it. Do it together with me. I will bite into it as easily as I do with a carrot. Ready? 1, 2, ah. If you actually believe that, welcome to the world. That was a common medical myth, misinformation, because you can't actually bite into your finger as easily as you would bite into a carrot. That just doesn't work like that. And if I really did want it to hurt someone, it could have been labeled as disinformation, wanting them to bite their own finger out. Now that we're in the topic of digital citizenship, as a counter to fake news, I trust you all listened well to the previous reporters, as we've now entered the part of our research where we've reached the summit of digital citizenship as a response to disinformation. As a refreshment, according to Karen Mosberger, an American political scientist, digital citizens are those who use the internet regularly and effectively. Now, does that really mean just because we use the internet effectively and regularly, we're already digital citizens? No, as discussed by Juliana, inclusion does not equal being digital citizenship. No, access does not equal inclusion. So, what does it really mean to be a digital citizen? Well, let's take it down. Would you? The skills. First and foremost, there are approximately 6 skills that you really need to have when it comes to being a digital citizen. That first one being digital literacy. We can call ourselves a digital citizen when we know what to do when we have a phone in our hands, when we know where to look for certain information. For example, what do you do when you want to know how many scales an armadillo has? You won't go to Instagram. You'll probably just find armadillo videos. Instead, you go to ResearchGate, Google, or whatnot. That's digital literacy, knowing what to do when you're on the internet or knowing what to do when you have a phone in your hands. Next one is critical thinking, not believing immediately, evaluating, assessing, thinking more deeper into it. That's a second skill. Third one would be online communication skills. Just as the new digital world is replacing our current world, we need to have the skills to be ready for it. Online communication skills. That's the third and most important one. Another one would be privacy and security awareness. Do you think if you're walking down a dark aisle going home, you would just let your bag out open so that people can pickpocket you? Of course not. Same idea goes here with in online. You just don't give your passwords out to anyone. Valuable information in your account can easily be stolen. That's a fourth skill. A fifth one would be ethical use of technology. What does ethical means? Ethical is a morally good or bad thing in human behavior. Is bullying people online an ethical use of technology? No. Is you posting positive or helping someone go through something online an ethical use of technology? Well, there you go. There it is. That's an ethical use of technology. And last but not least is digital responsibility. When we wish to become a digital citizenship, we must take accountability for our own actions online. You can't just go post a video and say it was wrong. wait, no, later to be disproven it was wrong, and then you just go, oh, I don't want to admit it was wrong because pride and ego gets to the best of you. But no, with digital responsibility, you have to take into account what you post, what you do online. Take responsibility for it. Those are the 6 skills that it means to be a digital citizen. Well, if your boxes are checked out in those skills, what does it exactly mean, even if you have those skills? Why is it relevant? Why are we talking about this? To be precise and to be short, you ever heard of the quote that back in the early 2000s, people would go to the internet to escape reality. They would go to the internet to browse YouTube, early Google or whatnot, to maybe get away, take a break from reality. But in the current world, oh no, it's the opposite now. People will go outside and use the term touch grass as an escape from the internet. That's how much our world has changed. We are talking about digital citizenship. It's so relevant because it is the new norm. We will live in a digital world. We are starting to live in a digital world. And whether we want it or not, we must equip ourselves. Again, let's break it down. Digital citizenship. Remove the digital. What is that? A citizenship. A citizen is someone who is legally acknowledged in a nation or country. That's exactly what a digital citizenship is. Digital citizens are people who are acknowledged online, people who ready themselves, people who exist in the meeting. That's what we need to prepare ourselves for. That's relevance. Now that we know what digital citizenship is, we've come to a conclusion that we raise a question. Are senior high school students of Cagayan de Oro actually good digital citizens? Are they digital literate? Do they protect their privacy? Do they have the 6 skills it needs to be a digital citizen? And that's why I'm asking you looking at this video, are you a good digital citizen? Well, let's find that out right now. I'm going to give you a scenario. Scenario number 1. A viral Facebook post claims that a celebrity was arrested, but it does not include a reliable news source. You as the viewer, what would you think if, say, Mr. Beast, you saw him on a Facebook post, which looks shady, right? And says that he was arrested. What would you do? I'll give you 5 seconds to think. Through thematic analysis, we analyzed the respondents of roughly 100 senior high school students from 5 different schools: Bulwa, Liceo, MOGS, USTP, and Xavier University. Through thematic analysis, we found their most common answers and most common themes that merge. Number 1 being, they would talk to a friend. They would tell their friend, have you seen the new post? And how they explain it, whether it was real or not, they would share awareness of that post. That's one of the more common responses. Another theme that arose was they would first verify that post. They would go to different sources and possibly not believe the exact post that the Facebook post it was posted at. And many people, another answer that arose was they would look at Google and multiple different sources. That's for scenario number 1. 500 different responses from 100 individuals. And another one would say they would verify, they would fact check it, they would check out the boxes if it was authentic, if there's no AI generated hints of the video or whatnot. And a minority of the people, of the students, said that they would just completely ignore the post, right? Now, scenario number 2. A photo of a public official appears online, but it looks shady and suspiciously edited. As the viewer, what would you do? I'll give you 5 seconds. Our common responses that we got from our survey was that people would look deeper into it. Reverse image search, put it to Google and see if it was actually edited. And some people would see and if the account was verified. That way they would know if it was reliable information. A third common response would be people would spot out any mishaps in the images, just like as this one, his feet turned into hands. They would spot out any minor hints that it would look AI. Many of which said that they would use Adobe or Photoshop or AI to help them detect if it was AI. And then the third scenario that we gave them was the news article about a political issue. It uses emotional language and presents only one side of the story. What will you do if you read a news article about a certain political issue, but it only uses emotional language and it only presents one side of the story? Well, the students of Cagayan de Oro answered frantically that first, they are very clever. By the sense of it, they already will be suspicious that the article is using way too much emotional language and it isn't presenting the whole story properly. That's that's already a good sign. And the second one was to look for another source. Of course, if it looks suspiciously one-sided, then of course we would love to hear the other side as well. Another response would just be to not trust it. If the source uses too much emotional language, then it would probably not just be credible. And the students just said they wouldn't trust it. The fourth scenario being social media's influencer promoting health drinks, claiming it improves memory, but provides no scientific evidence. What would you do if, say, Jake Paul gave you Prime and says, "Oh, this will cure your cancer"? Well, this is what the students of Cagayan de Oro will do. First and foremost, they would look at the ingredients. Are these ingredients per se actually match the description of curing cancer? That's one. Another one would go to would look if it is FDA approved, and another common response would to just be consult their doctor. You know, the specialists have it in hand. And for the last and final scenario we gave them was that a scenario where their friend would post a screenshot of their private conversation. Now, this hits close at home without the other person's permission. This is very relatable to the students that we conducted our survey. So before I show you their response, I would like to know your response. Really? Well, that's great because you answered exactly just like them. First and foremost would be to get angry at their friends. Of course, that's a common response was actually to just start yelling at their friends and saying, delete this post. That's one common response out of many. Another common response would be to confront their friend and say that they should respect each other. Instead of being angry, a lot of people say that they will talk to their friend, hopefully get situation dealt with, so that they can be friends again. Another common response, I don't know if these people ever have more friends or enemies, because another response would be to just completely ignoring the post and I guess blocking the user, their friend who leaked the screenshot as well, as to not let the post gain more traction. And lastly, commonly was said that most people would just confront their friend face to face and up to them what they will do, right? So what does this all say? Well, actually, comparing our study to a study done in Malaysia, in UPSI, they in a university in Malaysia, they conducted a research where they wanted to answer the question, are university students in Malaysia actually good digital citizens? What they got was a good 92% of them were in fact very well literate, but there were certain gaps, commonly just like our gaps. Like our gaps being few students actually in our research, we noticed in our gaps that few students actually mentioned establishing fact-checking platforms, those such as Verifiles, Rappler, Fact Check, Snopes, and any scenarios. As you've noticed in the 5 scenarios, what's constantly being brought up is search Google, another dominant verification strategy, but it's not treated as a multi-step process. Students just rarely describe evaluating the search results themselves. They rely on Google. Though it's good that the students are great, they have experience, they know the ropes of what it means to be a digital citizen, they lack the actual process of doing so. Now, there's a good and a bad in our research that we found. Another consistent gap was that lateral reading. What does that mean? Opening multiple tabs to assess a source's reputation from the outside was absent. Opening multiple tabs to assess a source's reputation was not done by the most of the students we gave the survey to. And lastly is passive or bystander responses appeared in every scenario, suggesting a group of learners who recognize misinformation but do not feel personally responsible to act on it. They do recognize misinformation, but it's as if like I said, a common response was to just scroll past it or ignore the post. We shouldn't train our students to do that. And now, how does this connect to our chapter? Essentially, UNESCO in 2020 vowed that they would create um, a, s- a course, yes, a course that would um, unite the MIL teaching their students well. And from what we've noticed in Cagayan de Oro City, from the 5 schools that we have surveyed, it's done well. Though there were a lot of missing key points, bottom line is the students were great. The students knew their way, knew their ropes. They were, I'd say, 80% complete when it comes to being a complete digital citizen. There's room for improvement, but yet their current status greatly is amazing. They're great digital citizens, and that's something that we answered in our survey. Now, what does any of this mean? Why are we here talking right now about digital citizenship? Again, as stated by UNESCO, young people are not digital citizens to be, they are digital citizens. Before I wrap this up, what if I told you everything I said was fake? Everything from Ervin's report, everything that we done was fake. How would you feel? How would you feel as the viewer when I sit here, I wasted more than an hour of your time just to say it was all fake? Well, grasp that feeling and keep it close. And whenever the next time you are online, use and equip yourself with that feeling of disappointment, mistrust, and anger. Because just as early humans survived by not getting away from the fire of more than 100-meter radius, they never swayed to the dark. They only stayed close to their fire. That's how we will survive in this new digital age, believing that everything we see will potentially and probably is fake until we ourselves have closure. That's how we must act online. That's how we will survive. Humans develop the fear of dark not because of um, what's not in the dark, but it's because of what's in the dark. Let's develop this fear of having our time, having our privacy being took from us every single time we step onto the internet. Once again, I'm Kirk Louie, Aspiras. Thank you so much for listening to this discussion. We are a group of verified. This is us, Media and Information Literacy Report, all about digital citizenship, a response to disinformation. Thank you so much for listening.